And joining us now on the debate in Madison, Wisconsin via Skype, Penelope Trunk, author of The Brazen Careerist, The New Rules for Success. In the nation's capital, Linda Duxbury, professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. And here in studio, Robert Barnard, founder of Decode, a research firm focused on information age generations. Philip Oreopoulos, professor of economics at the University of Toronto. And Joyce Chang, a relatively recent graduate with 2 degrees, currently looking for work. And yes, she is Generation Y. Welcome, everybody. Good to have you on in the nation's capital. Linda, pleasure to see you again. And Penelope. Thanks. In Madison, Wisconsin. The magic of Skype technology brings you to us tonight. Let me start, just to make sure everybody's on the same page here, by, Michael, if we can, bringing up this graphic showing who's who. We're talking about Generation Y tonight, which are essentially people aged 15 to 29. Generation X, not to be confused with them, who are considered 30 to 45-year-olds. The baby boomers, who we hear way too much about, from 45 to 65-year-olds. And, of course, the war generation, 65-year-olds and up, also known as the greatest generation, of course, that term made popular by Tom Brokaw. And as we look at the unemployment numbers, we're just going to flip right into this, Michael, if we can. Here's a look at the percentage of the labor force age 15 to 24 unemployed in some OECD countries. Now, this will not make people in this country who are in that age group looking for work necessarily feel any better. But relatively speaking, you can see that we are doing a whole heck of a lot better than Spain, Italy, France, the UK, and the US, and there we are. Not quite as good, though, as youth in Germany and Japan. But Robert, let me start with you on this. Is it safe to say younger people are being hit the hardest in this Great Recession?
I think, well, young people always get hit hard in recessions. It's tough to get into the job market. They don't have the experience, and when the job market really shuts down, they always struggle for the first bit. Of course, not all young people will struggle. Some young people who are in the job market are probably doing okay. Lower interest rates, other things will help that group out. So it's a little bit, young people's a broad topic, but I think there's certainly some will be really hardly hit.
Philip, what do you say on that?
I think anyone looking for work during a recession is likely to be adversely affected.
Young people more so, though?
Well, I would put those unexpectedly displaced or just laid off sort of ahead of that, of the youth. And youth definitely fall into that category. They take a hit, but there's a lot of research out there saying that those who suddenly lose their job unexpectedly, who otherwise would not have in better times, really take a hit and it lasts for a long time.
Linda, is it equally tough during a recession on university and college graduates versus high school graduates?
Not really. The university and college graduates have it far easier, actually. But I think I want to take it back a little bit, because I actually don't think that the young people are having it particularly rough in today's recession. I know that's not the popular choice, but you know, the group that I think has got the real problems is the Gen X, the 30 to 44, who have gone through already a recession, a jobless recovery, another recession. And now they're in the most active stage of their careers, where they want to buy a house, they want to get married, they want to start a family. And they're having real challenges because A, the boomers who they've always thought were going to leave the market now are finding their nest eggs gone and they're staying. And the younger people are nipping at their heels. So I think most of the young people that I talk to are riding it out at school, or they're taking a gap year, or, you know, a lot of the educated are not, they know what's coming in terms of the labor force shortages, and they're not that stressed, actually. Okay, interesting look at Gen X. Penelope, let me get you then to focus on Generation Y. How are they coping during this Great Recession?
Well, I think you have to look at people's skills, and Generation Y has by far the most marketable skills in the workplace. And I think we have baby boomers overrepresented in the media, and the baby boomer skills just aren't marketable, and their salaries are totally inflated, especially because Generation X is generally willing to work at lower prices than baby boomers. So I think the baby boomers are in the worst situation, and the Generation Y has very marketable skills, and they'll do fine. They're really picky about the jobs they take. Much more picky than Generation X, for example.
All right. Well, we've got an honest-to-goodness Generation Y member with us tonight. So without further ado, now that we've heard from everybody else. Okay, Joyce, welcome here tonight. How many resumes you got out there?
I send about probably 5 to 6 a week, and some of them are specific to what it is I'm looking for, and some of them are just, you know, something part-time, full-time.
Let's do something on your background here. You graduated from Simon Fraser University?
Simon Fraser in 2006 with a bachelor's in communication, and then I took about a year and a half to get real job experience, and I was really fortunate enough to find something at Triathlon Canada, where I got to work as a national program manager. So real on-job experience, and climbed up the ladder there. And then decided that it might be really good to add to my CV a master's degree. So I went back to school with
Where to?
Lausanne, Switzerland, to do a master's in sport administration or sport management. And it was a really great program. We made lots of contacts. And when we graduated at the end of December, actually, I had a job offer in Switzerland. Contract was signed, flew back to Toronto just to get my visa arranged. And of course, you know, in February, March, that's when the recession kind of hit globally, when everyone knew how bad it was. And subsequently got a phone call and said that they could not honor my contract. So I've been in Toronto ever since, just trying to find jobs and, you know, stay up to date in the market, which is the sports business market.
You're from the city, so obviously English is your first language, which you speak extremely well. You also speak?
I speak Mandarin, and I try to learn French and German as much as I can.
You sound like you've got, you know, you've got some really marketable skills there. But what are you finding out there?
It's just been really difficult. I think it's because we're competing a lot with the unemployment pool right now. So from what I gather from a lot of people I've talked to in HR, is that companies are able to post really specific qualities or skills and experience, and people are able to meet those demands. So for someone like myself that's a little overqualified to apply for a general administrative position and looking for a coordinator or a managing position, it's very difficult considering I'm competing with other people that may have not that experience, but more than. So they don't take the chance on someone like me, unfortunately, and I guess I just have to find other ways to compete with those people.
But you're in sports administration, so basically we should make you GM of the Leafs and just let you go.
I'm actually a fan of Brian Burke, so I think you just need to give him time
We'll give him time. We'll give him time.
You need to give him some time there.
Okay.
So.
Penelope, thank you for that, Joy. Come on in here, Penelope, and tell me about whether, you know, Gen Y is often described as the digital generation. These are the folks who are so up to date and very media savvy in all of the latest technologies. Does that give them an advantage over others who in this great recession are also pounding the pavement looking for work?
Well, it gives them an advantage if they're willing to go in entry level. I mean, let's just look at the example of, I didn't catch her name, of this woman who just graduated from school.
Joyce.
Sports marketing is an extremely desirable place to be in the workforce. That's a really fun place to be. And she's got 1 year work experience, and she wants to go into management. I mean, I just think that's really great. Like, if you can get that job, that's really great. But that this counts as unemployment is another story. I mean, there are a million jobs that she could take, but she doesn't want them because they're bad jobs. So the idea of what is unemployment in this recession, I think in the eyes of Generation Y, they don't want to take a meaningless job. They don't want to take a stupid job.
Okay, let's be clear about this, though. Good point, Penny. Let's clarify. You've taken your share of stupid jobs over the years, have you not?
I have. I sure have. And it's 1 year of actual full-time work experience. But since 2004, I've been volunteering. I have internship experience. I have 2 to 3 months contract experience. Not in sports, in different fields of sports, with production companies doing sports, with events, you know, volunteering, being the only intern at an event for 6 weeks. So I do have a broad range of experience, and it's not like I've just completely narrowed my search to sports now. It's been about a year, and I've widened my search to everything. You know, doing marketing, not just sport-specific marketing companies, but, you know, I'm looking even at CBC because I would like to do operations and logistics, so trying to get maybe production work experience.
And I should clarify, I shouldn't call them stupid jobs because any job you can get in a recession is a good job to have in some respects.
So.
But Robert, tell me, but there is this, you know, there is this knack that, or this sort of, I guess it's, you know, it's a reputation that Generation Y has, that if they can't get the job they want when they want it, they'd rather just, you know, go home and live in mom and dad's basement for a while and wait for something better to come along. Is that a fair knock?
No, it's actually not a fair knock. I think every young generation who struggles looks for some way to get support, and they will either move back in or they'll find the so-called difficult job or not the one they want. And as been doing this for about 15 years, and about 12 years ago I was, in these kind of sessions where young people were saying, I just can't get anything, and I'm not going to be able to get out, and I'm not going to be able to find the place that I want to go with all of my skills, and eventually it starts to come through. The big change with this generation, Generation Y, is actually debt. And that's where I think they are they're in a tougher shape right now than the Gen X is, because Gen X actually graduated out of university with far less debt than this generation has.
Okay, I know, Penelope, you're not on side with that last comment, are you?
Well, I think Generation X took really bad jobs after they graduated, so they end up with tons of debt also. I mean, I think, to me, the biggest difference is that Generation Y wants meaningful work. Generation X never anticipated having meaningful work. That's where we get the term McJob from Generation X, because they took such bad jobs. You would never hear Generation Y talking about a McJob. They just don't take them.
And Linda, come on in here and tell us why the difference then in approach and attitude from Gen X to Gen Y.
Well, if we look at Gen X in my research, they've had over 4, sometimes close to 5 or 6 different employers. They haven't built up the pension, the pension. They haven't built up the experience. They've got a tremendous amount of breadth, but they don't really have depth because organizations haven't invested in them. I think what is very interesting is just listening to the conversation. Everybody's looking down on the Gen Y because hello, look what you expect. Well, what we don't recognize is that within 5 years, they're going to get whatever they want. And it's unfortunate right now, but it's unfortunate for everybody. But if we look at where the market's going, we're going to be seeing 2 boomers leaving. For every 2 boomers leaving, we've only got 1 person in the pipeline for the next 25 years. And that's
so is the idea hang in there and eventually these jobs will come to you?
It's absolutely going to come, and they're going to have tremendous negotiating power because the boomers are getting older. And the boomers, well, I disagreed with the person who said we don't have anything to offer. We've got tremendous experience and tacit and skill, and what we've got is we're workaholics. We work phenomenal hours. So the data suggests that for every 2 boomers leaving, we're going to need 3 younger people to take their place, and we've only got 1.
Okay, let me read something here from, I'm going to read something here from Fortune magazine. Now, this is from May of 2007. So, admittedly, some time has passed. Let's see how accurate this is today. They're ambitious, they're demanding, and they question everything. So if there isn't a good reason for that long commute or late night, don't expect them, these are the Gen Ys, to do it. When it comes to loyalty, the companies they work for are last on their list, behind their families, their friends, their communities, their coworkers, and of course, themselves. But there are a whole lot of them, and as the baby boomers begin to retire, triggering a ballyhooed worker shortage, businesses are realizing that they may have no choice but to accommodate these curious Gen Y creatures, especially because if they don't, the creatures will simply go home to their parents, who in all likelihood will welcome them back. Is that all still true, Robert?
No.
It's not true anymore.
Well, actually, it wasn't true in the first place. I'm not sure where they got the stats from, but at DECO, we've been doing a study for the last 5 or 6 years focused on university students and focused on those who are already in the workforce. And we asked them a simple question: do you want to find a place where you can spend your entire career? And a majority of them always say yes. A majority of them say they want to find a place to spend their entire career. And that's funny, that's the same with every generation. They actually want to find that. So this is a group that is looking for stability. And also, when I say group, it's always very difficult to lump all of the entire generation into one group. There's so much variation. There's so many different life stages that we're talking about. So vast generalizations, I don't think, always serve the purpose.
Penelope, I heard you trying to get in there?
Well, I think every generation wants stability. So it's a non-answer, right? It would be insane for anyone to say they want an unstable life. So when you hear that Generation Y is moving back to their parents' house, they're not moving back and sitting on the sofa. They're the most entrepreneurial generation in history. So they're moving back home and starting an internet company in their basement, and it's failing in 3 months, but they have work experience then. And so they're actually doing amazing things. And to say that Generation Y is all unemployed living with their parents is not actually true. Their parents love having them at home, and they're doing really cool stuff at home.
Okay, Philip?
I think it's important to note that there are different types of jobs out there. There's some that offer more career and promotion opportunity than others. And in a recession, there just may not be as many of those good jobs out there. And so if Joyce or others are not able to find that, that good job out there, It may take longer to find it, but it's you know, this path to a job that offers, you know, some steady state and where they can stay and offer a career opportunity may just not be available right now, but is on the way and available. And like Linda says, you know, the skills that the Gen Ys have, you know, they just have to be persistent and wait for more of these good jobs to open up.
Well, let me follow up with Joyce on that. Are you at the point right now where, because it's taken so long for you to find what you really want and you haven't found it yet, that you've come to the conclusion that getting all that education was a bloody waste of time?
No, because it was a great experience in the end. And when you do a postgraduate degree, it's really about networking and meeting people and just learning about something that you really want to do. It's just been really frustrating, you know, hearing things like, sorry, you don't have enough experience, but how are you supposed to get experience if no one's going to give it to you? So it's just that whole cycle of things. So for me, I really want to work, and I really want to have a meaningful job. I want to be part of an organization or a company that will challenge me and that, you know, that I get to learn lots and grow with them. And it's just, in this type of environment, it's just been really frustrating and difficult, and it's really hard not to beat yourself down. And there are jobs out there, but unfortunately, when people are educated, you know, you can't help but think, I'm working at a bar or a nightclub or a restaurant or the fitness gym, and you're just sitting there dealing with these people that think that you are there because you have no education or no experience at all, and it's very difficult to take that. So
you're thinking, this is not what I was put here to do.
No, exactly. I think that I'm much smarter and much more useful somewhere else, but you know, as they said in recession time, there's a lot of people out there. I'm lucky, I'm fortunate that I have a father who welcomes me home, but I have a student debt that I have to pay off. And there are people out there that really, you know, don't have anything much left. The auto industry workers, I feel, that are suffering a lot. You know, those are people that have been working 10, 15, 20 years, have a mortgage, have children, have families, and that's gone from them, so.
Everything's relative.
Exactly.
Let me read something from Vanity Fair here, if I can. This is Peter Orszag, who's the White House budget director, to NYU students. And this article is called Orszag to NYU Students, Basically You're Screwed. This is from last November. White House budget director Peter Orszag addressed on how the financial crisis will impact the lifetime earnings of this year's graduates. History is not reassuring. Over 20 years, the wages earned by the class of 1982, a peak unemployment year, differed from those earned by the class of 1988, a peak employment year, by an average of $100,000. He also discussed new research indicating that a child whose parent is laid off is less likely to finish high school, attend college, or get a job after college. Even years down the road, that child will make less money than a child whose parents did not experience a layoff. Philip, I want to go to you here because Peter Orszag actually quotes you on his blog, quotes a lot of the work that you do. Graduating during a recession, what kind of an impact and how long down the road an impact can that have on your life?
So my colleagues and I looked at employment and earnings data for most Canadians graduating in universities between 1976 and 1995, so covering two major recessions, different economic conditions across provinces. And we found that those graduating in recessions on average were hit with about 10% lower wages on average compared if they otherwise would have graduated in better times. And that this recession shock persisted over time. It became smaller, but only gradually.
So the message is, if you start far behind everybody else, it's really hard to catch up along the way.
Some people did catch up, and by 10 years, most people did. But there were big differences depending on the types of field of studies that people.
So go into that. Who catches up and who doesn't?
Those that specialized in fields that just in general tend to pay more, those in the physical sciences, commerce, engineering, were much more likely to catch up, and those in graduating in the humanities or from less selective schools, it took a much longer time, and some of them even took just a permanent wage decrease.
So if you can, better to stay in school, get another degree, and graduate into a more buoyant economy rather than try to look for something now?
I mean, I think the general message from our research is that it appears that the ones who are able to catch up quicker are the ones who are most flexible and most willing to jump careers and try to find that good job if they're not able to succeed initially.
And how about the parental layoff aspect of it?
That's also consistent with what I've seen as well. They're definitely, but so that's more for the those who are unexpectedly laid off. It appears to be getting back to this wage shock. Those who lose their jobs not only affects their wages, but it appears to affect their children's outcomes as well.
Linda, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I did, because and I think that's all very meaningful and interesting for the previous labor market. But let's not forget that we had a buyer's market for labor in Canada for almost 50 years. Because of the huge baby boom cohort, we had way more people than jobs. And so, you know, we had boomers in there taking up pretty well all the jobs, and in a recession, last in, first out. Well, what we've got now going on is two things, and I think this recession is blinding us to the really big change that's coming our way, which is the fact that we haven't replaced ourselves as a nation since 1969, 1970. And so this huge pool of boomers are all going to leave at once, and we're not going to have the supply coming into our market. And immigration is not going to help us. There's lots of data on that. So what that means is employers are going to have to pay more than they've ever paid before, and think of different benefits and different incentives, and train more and develop more to get people. So I don't think that we're going to see this recession hurting the Gen Y. On the other hand, the Gen X, to go back to what Philip was saying, they've already been hurt. They're the group, you know, in '82 that got really nailed. And they've had this very turbulent labor market for their whole career. And I think you're going to see that the Gen Ys are going to catch up pretty quickly, and the Gen X are, again, going to have real challenges.
Okay, Robert Barnard wants in.
I just think we've run some scenarios to say, what if the boomers actually stick around a little bit longer in the workforce, and because of some of the economic collapse in their own personal portfolios, a lot of them have to stay at a little longer, and if they do stay longer, and the employment legislation allows them to stay even longer and delay retirement, that's going to affect all of those generations that are preceding, that come after them, Gen X and Gen Y.
They're going to have to stay an awfully long time.
Well,
Let's hear Penelope on this.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of how we look at the recession is how the media looks at the recession, how the media presents it. And this is a really good example right now. We're talking about, everyone is weighing in on, will there be a 10% decrease in your salary if you graduate into a bad market? But really, a 10% decrease in your salary does not affect your life. Like the outcome of how happy your life is largely determined on your level of optimism, not on whether or not you earn 10% more than your neighbor. I mean, that's just not a material, even if it's 30%, it's not a material impact on your level of happiness. And it's a very baby boomer way to look at the world. Like, everyone's in a race to get a lot of money, and it's a competition, and 10% means you're not the highest one. It's just not how Generation X or Generation Y looks at the workplace. And so when you talk about how the recession's going to hit, I think it's more important to talk, when you're talking about Generation Y, to talk about, will they have meaningful work? Will they be personally fulfilled? They care way more about that than will they have a 10% increase or not.
Understood. Philip?
I think it's important to note that the research is, this 10% number is on average. So for any individual that doesn't take a hit for this recession, it means that there are other individuals out there where the effect is larger. And so even for someone who loses a job, the average impact is a wage decrease for 30%. But that just, you know, sort of clouds the fact that there's some, you know, people who are not adversely affected, and there's some people who are really hurt in a large way. So there's definitely a lot of heterogeneity in these impacts. There's some people who are hurt more than others, and just this average number indicates that there are some people out there that do take a hit. And so I think the 10% number still indicates that there are some people taking a hit.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's also the difference between graduates and the entire generation. A generation's 15 years. The graduates in Gen Y right now are going to get hit the hardest of that whole generation.
Let me follow up on that, and I've got something here that Joyce is not going to make you terribly happy to hear, but let's get into some discussion about that as we go. Here's from Business Week towards the end of last year. Employers are likely to suffer from the scarring of a generation. The freshness and vitality young people bring to the workplace is missing. Tomorrow's would-be star employees are on the sidelines, deprived of experience and losing motivation. In Japan, which has been down this road since the early 1990s, workers who started their careers a decade or more ago and are now in their 30s account for 6 in 10 reported cases of depression, stress, and work-related mental disabilities, according to the Japan Productivity Center for Socioeconomic Development. Okay, let me go to Penelope first, and then I'm going to come back to you, Joyce, for a reaction on that. I guess this generation Y that wants jobs now, but is being told you may have to wait 5 years for the boomers to leave, and then there'll be lots of opportunities out there. What they're probably wondering is, will we get those jobs in 5 years, or are we going to lose out to the fresh young graduates who will be coming out of post-secondary institutions 5 years from now? What's the answer to that?
I don't know why we think that those people are waiting around. They're extremely entrepreneurial. 90% of Generation Y says they would like to start some kind of business on their own. And also Generation Y is very oriented toward having two or three things going on at once. So I'm not convinced that they're sitting around waiting for things to happen. They're just not doing a conventional career where they feel like they need to be in corporate America in order to get experience. But the other thing is that for the last 100 years, the age group most likely to be severely depressed and suicidal are people in their 20s. So that's not unique to this generation or a recession.
I got to tell you, I think we're depressing the hell out of Joyce tonight, and she's regretting her decision to come in and participate in this discussion.
I think I need an escort home just in case.
Someone give her a job.
Someone give me a job before.
Save this poor woman before. But when you hear that kind of stuff, I mean, what do you think?
Well, it's true. This is a very frustrating time. You go through your entire life, I think, in Generation X, is that you can obtain anything. It's kind of like the dreamer lifestyle. You just work hard, get your education, and then when you graduate, you'll have a job, and everything will be okay, and you know, money will flow, and everything will be great. And it doesn't happen. And recession is something that we can't control, and we're so used to controlling things. You know, we are on our Blackberries and the internet, MSN, like we're very internet savvy and media savvy, and recession comes along and we don't know how to equip or deal with it because when the first time it happened, we were so young when it happened. Well, I was young. Sorry. Sorry.
Do you consider, you know, kind of riding out this recession by going back to school and getting, who knows what, maybe a master's or something beyond?
You know, right now with this recession, I'm thinking the only thing that I can go back to and get a decent or get a job, guarantee a job when I leave, is medical school. Because no matter what happens, people will be sick and unfortunately dying, and that to me seems like the only occupation that's invested that you're guaranteed to have something when you leave. But I have friends right now that are working doctors in first, second year attendings, and they're saying it's been a pretty struggle for them as well. So unfortunately with my student debt, I need to find a decent paying wage job right now to start making payments off of that.
Okay, Robert Barnard wants in.
I think that the fact that you're going through this right now is probably long-term a good thing, because 5 years ago I was talking about how Gen Y was the first generation not to really go through a recession and hard times. And the hard times does make you a little bit more scrappy and a little bit more willing to be flexible, because you got to do that. And you'd rather go through that now, tough to know this now, but now than go through it when you're 65. I mean, that's a tougher time to go through it. So it is tough short term. Long term, you'll probably be better off because you'll be more flexible. And it does show that recessions do bring on entrepreneurs. This is actually one of the differences between Canada and the US, is that young Gen Y in Canada are not as entrepreneurial. Again, back to the study that we did at Decode, the most desirable career right now is in the public service. It's to work in government. It's not to start your own company.
You know what, Linda, and after this discussion's over, Linda and I are going to do a one-on-one and talk about that very angle of this thing. But Linda, why don't you come in and follow up on some of what you've heard already?
Yeah, some of the stuff, like I've talked to thousands of them too, and my stuff and your stuff don't necessarily agree, because when I ask them about job security and everything, they go, you know, why would I want to marry you? I think you got a communicable disease. Let's live together for a while and see how it works out. They want an exciting job, an interesting job, something that they can make a contribution. They want to be coached, they want to be mentored, and for me, what they tell me is employability. It's about skills. And because they feel they've been they've observed that it's about learning, and if you've got the skills for the market, you're going to get a job. And they don't, you know, most of the people that I've worked with now, it could be because I'm in Ottawa and they know more about the government up here, I don't know. But many of them are going, I would rather stick needles in my eyes than work for the government. So,
well, 5 years running, it's been the #1 employer in our survey. 25,000 students every year. It's a huge.
Really?
But is that where they want to be? Is that where they want to be?
Well, I think it's a great stable career. There's a great employability. They get promoted faster than most private
Does it fill
sectors.
their soul?
Well, for some of them, it's a way to give back. I mean, this is the way to serve their country.
so are
not
they in
for all
high
of them.
school? Are they in high school?
No,
these
they're
students?
actually university and college students.
That trend is also in the U.S., that government jobs are really hip right now because it's giving back.
Penelope, or excuse me, Joyce, is that anything you have considered along the way?
A government job?
Yeah, public service job.
Actually, I looked at the Toronto and Canadian website, so depends what it is. But right now, I'm pretty much open to a lot of things. I even started looking at Moscow, Russia, the other day, and Sochi for their 2014 Olympics that they have there. So
you, when Philip talks about you need to be more flexible, you're prepared to leave the country.
oh, I personally would love to leave Canada and get experience in Europe, Russia, or abroad somewhere. China, depending on if the experience is right or the opportunity is right there. But for me, I've never felt that I need to stay in one place, and I'll go wherever they offer me a great job or a great experience, a great opportunity to learn lots and be able to bring something to the table.
Would it be going away with a view eventually to coming back?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, I love Toronto.
This is still home?
This is home.
Huh, okay.
Loyalty in the generation.
That I think
Go
is
ahead, Penelope.
One thing that's important to look at, I think, is the research about how people who are most flexible are most resilient in a bad economy. And I think that speaks a lot to graduate school. I think the utility of graduate school is getting smaller and smaller. Most people will change careers 3 to 5 times, which means graduate school only lasts usually for one career. So what it's worth in someone's life is much less than it used to be. But also the debt that you incur from graduate school makes you inherently more flexible when you re-enter the workforce. So in a recession, it looks appealing to go to graduate school to wait things out, but you actually are way, way more flexible if you don't have that degree that specializes you and typecasts you, and you don't have the debt that makes you unable to take an entry-level job.
Robert, I suspect we all have a pretty good hunch about what the answer to this question is, but let me put it to you anyway. The young people who, all things being equal, were unlikely to go after high school for post-secondary education, either university or college, perhaps they traditionally headed to the factory floor. And now they find themselves out of high school, they're Generation Y, they're in this economy. What are their prospects looking 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road?
It's going to be tough for them too. Actually, they're more likely to probably go into the service sector. So you need to keep an eye on where they are in the service sector. If you happen to be at now Sam's Club, which is letting go lots of people, you're in tough shape. If you're in Starbucks, you're probably in okay shape because they're doing well. So there are winners and losers obviously in the different sectors of the economy. But for young people who just have a high school degree, it's always tougher. I think Penelope makes a great point. You want to stay as flexible as possible, and think about the master's degree. Think about that as a possibility to make yourself more flexible, but also understand the cost of the debt that you're going to be taking on when you get there.
Philip, does your study, does it look at the relative levels of optimism across generations?
No, but
what can you tell us on that?
There was some work done, at least across education levels, and my work was focused at the university level, but there's been some follow-up work at the high school level, not finding as much impact from the recessions. But on the flip side, that's probably due to the fact that whether in a recession or a boom, those who just have high school are hurt more than anyone else. So that they're just not able to get the types of careers. So unemployment rates are much higher. And wages are much lower, whether they're in a boom or a recession. So, on balance, it just seems that at least post-secondary education seems to be an extremely good investment.
Okay, let me follow up on that. We got what, a few minutes left here before 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes before Linda and I do our one-on-one. Let us make this worth your while coming in tonight here, Joyce. And I want all these experts to give Joyce some advice on what she ought to do right now. Penelope, go ahead. 30 seconds, give her some advice.
Start doing sports marketing yourself. Just do projects for yourself and stop waiting for someone to hire you to do it. Do the projects and put them on your resume.
Well, I'm already on that. Trust me, I'm already on that.
Gotta just keep doing it.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough that Triathlon Canada, that my relationship with them before I left for the Masters, that I told them I'm looking for something, and their age group program just needs a little bit of reorganization. So they said, we can only have you on part-time basis. It's perfect. So, you know, already on that, helping out some friends doing their traveling around the world.
I'm getting you more advice here. Hang on a second.
Oh,
okay,
sorry.
Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I like that advice. I mean, I started Decode in the last recession, and it was one of the best things I ever did. And so it takes a lot of effort, and friends and family come in handy. But that, for the entire generation, this is a great opportunity. And you think about some of the companies that were started out of Generation X who went through the recession the last time in the early 90s. There might be a great opportunity for you there.
Okay, Linda?
I guess I'd say be patient, which is not probably the advice that you want to have.
That's what every 20-year-old wants to hear, Linda. Be patient.
Hey, I got a 19-year-old daughter, and I understand. But you know, these things happen. It's a bad recession. You graduated, you came out in a bad year. Trust me, it's going to get a lot better. Just hang in there, be positive, don't beat yourself up. Don't ever regret the education and the experience, and be patient. It's going to happen.
Well, she's positive. I like that.
That sounds good. Okay, Philip, last piece of advice to you.
Be patient. Keep your eye out on the jobs that do come available over time, and maybe even be willing to accept a job that may not offer the wage right now, but offers opportunities and networks later on.
Perfect.
I think the Pan Am Games people should just call you and let you run the whole damn thing. What do you
My
think?
phone number is.
Are you more or less pessimistic about things now after having sat through 38 minutes of this discussion?
It's just a constant battle with yourself. Like, the numbers are there, but I think at the end of the day, you can either try to beat the numbers or you know, or just lay away the side way and just kind of give up and throw your hands up. So
My hunch is you're not going to do that.
no, I think that's not in my personality to do that. So.
Good stuff. That's Joyce Chang, Masters of Advanced Studies in Sports Administration and Technology, everybody. Thanks as well, Penelope Trunk from Madison, Wisconsin, author of The Brazen Careerist. Should we go to the two-shot on the other side of the table again? Alongside Joyce was Robert Barnard from Decode. Thanks, Robert, for being here tonight. Philip Oreopoulos from the University of Toronto, and Linda Duxbury from Carleton University.